Welcome. I'm going to invite you wherever you are to get into your body, and that's just with authentic movement. So authentically stretching, breathing, and opening the heart. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Take a moment to lean in gallery view. I know we're spotlighted, so you won't be on camera, but look at your tribe for a moment. Who are the other reflections that have gathered around soul and sacred relating? Welcome. I'm Kamaladevi.
And I'm McClure.
And we today are so excited to be celebrating this is our 20-year anniversary month. So we're celebrating that with you. Yeah, and we're harvesting. We've been all month in this wormhole portal, this beautiful spiral of just like, what have we learned? What are we learning? What are we dedicating ourselves to? What are we here for? So it's been really, really rich. And what I'd love to do is give you a little roadmap of the journey that we're going to take together. And then after that, after the roadmap, I'm going to invite you to the best of your capacity to keep your screen on, to participate fully. I know there's some of you who may not be available to do that the whole time, and that's okay. And coming and going is okay. But I think you'll get the most out of this the more you put into it. And by the way, this is, it's really intimate for us to share. Like, this is our love is a laboratory, and we're doing it often transpersonally. Like, we're doing it for ourselves and for our community, and we want to share. And it is very much a product. Our partnership is a product of all of the Tantra festivals and the work that we've done together. So I wanted to just really encourage you to lean in, and I value your time. Like, we're going to go on this journey, and I want you to know that you can get a massive upgrade, paradigm shift, transformation just online in this 90 minutes. And that has to do with your intentionality. Like, what are you bringing to this time together? And our intention is to support that shift. Some of you are already deeply on that path, and it's a shift of center of gravity, from relating at the level of personality and mind and identity into the deep communion that can happen at the other dimension of soul. And we'll go into what is that, because we all have concepts of soul, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the deep embodied awakening that's possible in self and in relationship. And many of you are like, I got the awakening in the self, but what does it look like on the relationship path, which is obviously exponential, next level. So we'll talk about that as well. So the basic roadmap is this. Michael's going to tell you a little bit about our story. And then we want to hear your story, like who you are in relationship. And we'll do some breakout to look at our own patterns. And then we'll also be looking at that big distinction between ego and soul. And, we'll be making some distinctions at the edge of our own understanding. Like, we're talking about things that words can't even quantify. So we'll be doing some self-reflection, some self-assessment about our relationship to our own souls, as well as in partnership. And we wanted to ground this in a larger conversation of soul tribe, soul family, soul community, which is a lot of what we're craving in our lockdowns or a separation, or during this time we really want to share how important soul tribe is for the support of the partnership, as well as our own awakening. But my hope by the end of this time is that you'll have tools and tips and takeaways that will, wherever you are on the path, really take you to the next level. So we'll do a little harvest to see what you're committed to doing in the way of spiritual practice or in the way of more intimacy. So I really want to hold you accountable to taking something very practical from this journey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So as KamalaDevi was mentioning, we did meet on Valentine's Day 20 years ago at a Tantra Puja. And it was very much a soul meeting, although I didn't recognize it at the time. We were both polyamorous and we were both tantric, which I kind of look at now as kind of antennas that were kind of pulling us towards each other. We went through our first 5 years there was a lot of conflict because we were really in our ego states still and just trying to figure out how to make those work together. And then the next 5 years, we had our son 5 years ago, Devin. He's 15 now. So we had him at that time. And yeah, we wouldn't have had him if we were still in too much conflict. So we kind of threw down our swords for about a year to make sure that we were able to do that before we had Devin.
I want to jump in with an ultimatum. You know, a lot of times there's an ultimatum. I was like, if you want to stay together, I want to have a baby. You know, the typical like cliche, right? Like I really was, my ovaries were speaking and I'm like, I need a baby if we're going to stay together.
And my ultimatum was, I'm not going to have a baby with you if we're going to be fighting, you know, because to me that meant, you know, the end was, you know, coming, because that's what it meant within me, my personality.
And culturally, because I'm Latina and my family was like always a big telenovela and there was like chaos all the time. I just felt like fighting was part of the passion. I thought that, well, that's how we relate, you know? Mm-hmm. And so it was an intercultural conflict as well.
Yeah. And it was scaring me. So I said, hey, if we can not fight for a year, I'll have a baby with you. And wow, she straightened up right away. So for a year, we got along great. And that was enough for me to know that it was possible. So we had our baby, and then we kind of went into another dark time where she became, had a postpartum depression for several years. And it was another dark time, but we knew that it was possible for us to get to that place where we're going to be, you know, not in conflict again. And that kept us going. Then about 5 years later, we went into our television show. We were on a television show, Polyamory, Married and Dating.
Just a quick show of hands if you've heard of Showtime's docuseries, Married and Dating.
Polyamory, Married and Dating.
Yes, a few of you. Okay. Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't, it's streaming right now on Showtime.
Yeah. And so, and that was another, like a super big blossom of creativity within our relationship. And it also signaled another dark time. You know, after that time, we went into a lot of conflict around our relationships with others.
Specifically, you know, the show was about our family and other couple that we moved in with and other beloveds, and the cameras actually followed us into the bedroom and showed, you know, our tantric, you know, sexuality. And so it was a very radical, vulnerable expression. And then afterwards, for a multitude of reasons, I crashed and had a nervous breakdown. Like after the 2 seasons, like it was a deep existential falling apart. And that actually involved the loss. We were with a triad with Rachel Rickers. For those of you that know Rachel, she lived with us and we had a breakup, and that crash was almost cost us our marriage. So we were at the brink of divorce for a while.
Yeah. And then it was really discovery of soul through ISTA, through a lot of other work that we were doing, that made it possible for us to kind of see past the personality things. That's the way I, you know, feel it within my being, that, you know, we were able to look at this, you know, all these conflicts, and they weren't deal breakers necessarily anymore. It was more like yeah, we came together in a soul partnership, and as long as we're really listening to that soul partnership, it kind of overrode everything else, in the personality realms, and it made everything a lot smoother for me. That's the way it felt. Yeah. And we stopped fighting as, pretty much all together. And yeah, and in this last 5 years, we've kind of discovered the purpose of our relationship, which is, peace on earth through harmony in a relationship. So that's what our relationship is dedicated, towards.
Yeah. And it feels really beautiful to have a dedication to something that's actually bigger than us. And I think that's also really key. And what's important for those of you, if you're not polyamorous, to know that this distinction between personality and soul happens even in my relationship with my 15-year-old son. Or Michael's brother right now is visiting us from France. And so he's been with us all month. And there's this movement of like, wow, I'm now relating to Christians soul at the soul level, not participating at the ego level. And so it's an upgrade of all kinds of relationships, whether it's my brother-in-law, my son, but Michael has other lovers. I have other lovers. If I were single or monogamous, it would totally still apply. So wherever you are in your relating, like the tools and teachings that we're offering they transcend the form of relationships. So we happen to share, hey, we've got 20 years experimenting with different forms and different practices, but that the harvest is really eternal and transcends, the structure. In fact, the structure of relationship is often created in the realm of personality. It's not a soul structure. It's like, this is the structure.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was just thinking, my brother's staying with us. He's leaving in a couple of days, but he's staying with us right now. He lives in France. And I'm recognizing that, a couple of years ago, it would drive me crazy, some of the ways that he would, act. And now it's like, wow, I'm actually, it's not bothering me. But as you mentioned it, I lived with my brother 20 years ago, right before KamalaDevi and I met. I lived with him in France for 2 years. And all of our lives before that, we hated each other. We were at each other like two wild cats all the time, our entire lives. At that time, I was 35. And he invited me to come live with him. And it was right after I'd had some shamanic, breakthroughs of discovering that I was tantric, discovering that I was poly. And living with him, I notice now that that's actually the transition. We love each other now since we've lived together. But that was, my recognition of the soul, the soul language between us.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the first time I've noticed that or even thought of that. So
this is why we love to teach, so that we learn about ourselves. Thanks.
I would have missed that one if we hadn't had this.
Good. So I want you to do some self-reflection. And, before we really start to try to define what is soul, what is ego and personality, which, can be a big mind trap, I want you to just self-assess, your patterns as a lover. You have enough life experience to go, oh yeah, like this is the personality piece that aggravates my partners or that keeps wrecking the relationships, or and even if you're just sort of starting to track it, it's really valuable to name it and to be witnessed in it. So we're going to do a breakout group or a triad in which you share, okay, my personality in relationship, my personality pattern is, and that then you listen to each other's and you just see what you learn about yourself.
Should we give an example of ours?
Yes, that'd be perfect. Okay, we'll do that. And part of this is to really get a sense of, why are you here? Like, your soul brought you to this session with us, and your mind or personality often doesn't want to change. But the promise of this time together is the opportunity to actually break through an old pattern. So we want to actually put it in the light, pull it from the shadow, put it onto the altar and say, this is what I'm offering up. This is the pattern that keeps costing me contentment in relationships, and I want to put it on the altar. I don't know how to change it, but at least I want to offer it up. And
should I describe ours? Okay, I'm going to describe ours because I think it will be helpful for KamalaDevi also to hear that I know what her pattern is, that she feels like she's not heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I do hear you, but that's her pattern. If she doesn't feel heard, it can become a very critical, within her emotional state.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And one of the things on that, that I didn't introduce this in the beginning, but my pronouns are they, them. And this is an absolutely new, development for someone who's loving me for 20 years and trying to change pronouns.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. So I wanted to correct him and actually give you permission. It's okay if you mess up. But that is, part of my soul expression. Actually, there's a way where my personality and how I express myself is very, very feminine. And when I really deeply tap into my soul's hermaphroditic. And the they, them is a deeper expression of how I experience myself at the soul level. So
yeah, so they need to feel heard, to really be in their highest expression, on this plane.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll share what I know of yours.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So in in the years of doing deep looking at core wounding, looking at some of your history, I know that there has been a sense of, oh no, I'm doing it wrong, or I don't want to mess up, or I want to be right. I want to do right by you. And so when Michael doesn't feel like, just now when I corrected him about my pronouns, for example, that might even be like, oh no, I'm being made wrong. And that might activate an old wound. So the personality has a certain need to feel like it's doing right by me or by anyone. And so you can see how if I, tell him, you're not listening to me, he then feels made wrong. And then when he's not feeling like he's doing right by me, it's really hard to hear me, really hard to listen. And so this is an example of how two core wounds or personality patterns can actually like hook into each other, making it worse, and then spiraling down into a lot of different fights. Yeah.
Exactly.
So those are just examples of one of our core patterns that we're aware of. There's obviously more, but we're going to ask you to do that same thing. In relationship, what is my personality pattern that I want to own right now? So Paula, thank you for being our tech goddess, is going to put us into breakout rooms. Go ahead and I believe you have to go down. Is that right? Go down to where it says breakout rooms, and you're going to have 10 minutes. So I'm going to suggest, and Paula will write a little message, that you have 3 minutes each to share your personality pattern. Let's go ahead. We'll be back in 10. We're good. Okay, we're back. We're coming back. And hopefully now we're gathering with more awareness of our own personality patterns. I want to offer the opportunity to just take maybe 1 to 3 shares, a few shares about someone who's like, ooh, I identified this and I really want it to be witnessed, because the more, whether I witnessed by 3 people or maybe the 30 people in the Zoom room, the more I can shine a light on it. It's kind of like an alcoholic, admitting that you're an addict is the first step. So admitting that pattern is going to get you closer to
especially if you're really desiring to change that pattern.
Yeah.
Somebody that has some juice around it.
So you can use the show of hands, or just raise your hand if you want to just name your personality pattern for us to take a few examples. Awesome. Emerald, just take a few breaths. I don't know if you saw the hearts, the hearts that came up. You're not alone. And just, I want to normalize all of these, because in the human heart, we all have a lot of the same patterns. So there is sometimes a need for the personality to select somebody who they see developmentally not as far on a path, because then, oh, wow, I get to be the rescuer, the savior, or the martyr. Sometimes we do this pattern because it's like, oh, then there is that, like you said, power dynamic. And I know I have a certain arrogance that can come in and say, ooh, I get to be, the teacher, there's different reasons why we have these patterns. But what's important is when we own, oh, maybe I'm attached to the judgment or the fixing or the, there might be something that I'm getting from that. You may or may not resonate with what I've said, but I want to just say that like a lot of us have this, and this is it's really common to kind of notice, ooh, my partner selection is keeping me from being met at the level that I really want to be met. Is not to fix that pattern, it's just to welcome it onto the altar, to accept it.
Recognize it, yeah.
Absolutely. Good, thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you.
What great self-awareness. I appreciate noticing the power distinction when we put someone on a pedestal. Now there's a differential, and the giving away of one's own power, and that there's something that we're getting out of that, that's keeping us in the story of separation, keeping us again from really being met at the deep level that you're longing for. So I don't know, again, when you're sharing, if you didn't see like Roy and others, everybody's hearts and nodding, and there's a lot of resonance with that one as well. So thank you. All right, we had one more share of a personality pattern.
Nisreen.
Thank you. What you're pointing at is actually a very universal indicator that we're in our ego, which is when we're trying. So if you're in relating and you're like, oh, I feel like I have to try or impress or work at this, like that's what the ego does. And it's completely different than the quality of like knowing who you are and being that in love.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that you notice, you're like, oh, I'm over caring, I'm over tending, and it's efforting. I'm having to effort to be something for someone else. That's exactly how we know that that's the ego pattern. So yeah, thank you for naming it. And again, it has a lot of different manifestations for all of us. We have our unique, patterns, but we are going to shift gears.
Yeah, as we're talking about this, the ego and, what the soul would do as well. Are there people out there that have like examples or feelings where they're like, oh yeah, I actually have I can differentiate the difference between that ego or that personality relationship versus a soul relationship? I see some people nodding their heads. Is there anybody that wants to share about that?
Yeah, we want to crowdsource a little bit before we offer our distinctions. We'd love to hear, your wisdom. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, I want to use your share as a transition into the soul and the body, because obviously here in the Tantra Festival we're doing these embodiment practices, and so a lot of times people say soul is this etheric, greater, non-physical self, and it's out here. And I want to actually bring us into the wholeness of what soul is. And by the way, with deep empathy and compassion for Robin's share, like I have a number of soul connections that are deep love that aren't physical, that just aren't. It's like, ooh, we meet on this other vibratory plane and we exchange soul medicine, and it isn't in the body. So I'm not here to say that there is a certain way that a soul relationship should look. And I am here, because we are multidimensional beings. We all have physical bodies, or at least all of us listening to this, and we have psychological bodies and emotional bodies, which, vibratory bodies. There's etheric bodies. There's dream bodies. Like we are, multidimensional in our shamanic capacity, and soul can traverse all these bodies. So a lot of times people think, oh, I need to raise my vibration and be in my soul. And if I'm in my emotional wounding, I'm not my soul, I'm in my wounding. And it's like, actually, soul can move up and down in the same way that our ecstatic current, our erotic current can be emotional and sapiosexual. And, there's lots of different levels. Soul, and eros can move up and down. And so I really want to name that so that when we talk about soul relating, aren't just talking about these higher levels, but we as bodies are inside of soul, not just the soul is in the body. It's like it's in the body and we're inside. It's both. It's ensoulment.
And there's another way that I've started to feel about soul work is recognizing that for me, sometimes soul connection will just be having fun with someone, that's like just being playful. And I've noticed like the soul language isn't really a language of a human language. Like for instance, we have a cat and we're deeply in love, and I pet him all the time and he loves it. And I know that we're having a connection, we're having a communication, and it's a soul connection, because we don't have anything else except that physical connection. And even babies, I feel like babies,
especially babies.
Yeah, babies don't speak with human language yet. When they're super young, they're only speaking with soul language, which is that language of love, really.
Yeah.
And so it can come in many different forms. Doesn't have to be physical, sexual, doesn't even have to be creative or fun or anything. It can be many different things.
Here's the paradox of the soul. And this is like, if you get nothing else from today, this is the piece I want you to just like come away inquiring deeper into. The soul is a fucking contradiction, because at one level, it's connected to source. It's absolute oneness. At one level, soul is that, like, it's connected to the group soul that we are for this moment when we really tune in, or the world soul that we are when we feel what's happening in the Ukraine and we feel like, wow, there's this massive impact that's happening to all of us. Or, the planetary soul, like soul connects us to something so much bigger. And then it's absolutely unique to you. Like it's completely individual, but it's also indivisible. That's the paradox. Now, the reason that's so relevant is when we start in partnership, whether it's to your beloved, to your cat, to your son, like when we go into partnership, what happens is this individual soul has its own expression. It's encased in a body that has a personality and an ego, and the ego has its own pathologies and neurosis and story, and like we just started stirring up a little bit, but there's a lot there that the personality holds. And then there's a unique soul medicine and a frequency. Now, the soul medicine that I bring to Michael is very unique and different than the soul medicine. There's a soul exchange that happens here. And we also know that as poly lovers, I have, together we probably have a dozen other lovers, and when we're really relating at soul, each lover has a different frequency medicine exchange. And I'm not trying to get something there that I can't get here or get all my needs met here. It's more like, just how do I show up as soul? And right relation means I'm bringing out the best in his soul so that his soul can give the world his gifts. I can give the world my gifts. And every one of our lovers can have their soul shine and be uniquely who they are, and also part of the world soul.
Which sounds super Pollyanna and and beautiful, and also I can imagine it feeling really daunting, to feel like we can have that kind of unconditional love.
And there's, we're here to make it practical.
Yeah.
We really want to make it accessible. But there's a deep paradox we have to understand first. It's an embracing that the soul, that it's a partial truth that the soul is oneness. And it's a partial truth that, hey, this is my unique individual soul, that the soul is both. And then in relationship, now here's how this applies.
Yeah. So here's the gold. In a nutshell, if I can keep myself in a beautiful state despite circumstances, it's a way of thinking of it. There's always going to be circumstances in a relationship, because our egos, our personalities have all of these things that are making us think, oh, for her to be my soulmate, she has to be, I have to check all these boxes. She has to be this and this and this, and kind, and not being mean to me, and not being angry at me, and not making me feel like I'm doing things wrong and being a bad boy or whatever. If I can overcome that and say, okay, even if she is, or I'm saying even if they are coming at me with things that are pressing on my core wounding, I can still stay in that beautiful state. That's the place that was the breakthrough for me. And that, it's not just in relationship, it really goes to even the world soul, like, the things that are happening in Eastern Europe right now, and the things that are happening all over the world, and world hunger, and all of this stuff. If I can keep myself in a beautiful state, despite the circumstances that are happening, it keeps me in that soul place. And it also kind of brings an unconditional acceptance of my partners and whoever I'm in relationship with.
And this is a practice. Michael genuinely is, I think I'd say probably 7 years into like a deep soul commitment to this being a daily practice of like raising his vibration, being like noticing, oh, okay, I'm grumpy this morning. Let me go raise my vibration and come from soul. Like there's a way in which he's genuinely committed to transcending all the personality traps that keep coming up. And there's a way that, like I said, a lot of us are in an awakening, and some of us are like, hey, I can raise my vibration and be in a great place but then when it comes to a partnership, then my buttons start to get pushed, right? It's hard to co-create. It's like I can create a beautiful state, but then when I want something from someone else. Now, this is the key, is that the biggest difference between personality and soul is that a personality wants. The personality needs, like it doesn't want for, Michael's peace and beauty. The personality actually is like, hey, I want you to provide for me. I want you to listen to me. I want to get things from you. And that's what personalities do, is they see relationship as a transactional means to the end. And so the bigger distinction is, my personality is going to try to be something so that it can get something else. Like there's a kind of a negotiation that's built into us ever since we were babies. And it's like, oh, I need to be good or right in order to get my mom's love. And then that's how I try to play out. A lot of times we have unmet needs from childhood that are so deficient because we didn't get them in our family of origin. And then we try to get them met from our partners now. And we're wondering, why the relationship is so dysfunctional when we came from a dysfunctional household. And so there's almost like a waking up to a different dimension that has to happen that says, even if my personality needs aren't getting met, I can vibrate in my soul's truth and come from that place and relate to another. And the other stuff it's like my center of gravity shifts so that the new way I'm relating, the other stuff's still going to play out. It's still personality, but I'm transcending that and coming from my heart to your heart.
Can I say it specifically within our relationship? You okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
So in our relationship, I would feel like KamalaDevi was being angry at me. And what they were trying to do was trying to get their need to be heard taken care of, to me, it sounded like I was doing something wrong. So for me, I would go into my breakdown place. As soon as I was able to recognize that, I would not break down anymore. And I'd be open to listening to their anger. And then it felt to them like KamalaDevi was being heard now.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly that loop broke, where it didn't need to happen anymore, where it opened up, where they were feeling heard. I was feeling like I wasn't doing anything wrong anymore, because they weren't coming at me anymore with that. And it wasn't what came across as anger.
Right, but it wasn't because I wasn't coming at. I was still doing the thing. And the because is Michael scratched the record. He broke the pattern and he said, oh, let me come from soul. And that coming from soul is not, oh, am I right? Am I wrong? And it's like, okay, my personality is still doing that trip, still stuck in that loop, but that's not where I'm coming from. I'm going to connect from soul. And from that place, I can see that they're clearly wanting to be heard or whatever it is. Now, we give you this example. You may or may not relate. Any number of examples are still, you're going to try to solve it at the level of the problem, and you're fucked, because another problem's going to come up, and then another problem's going to come up. And as long as you keep trying to solve it, personal growth, you're going to be just wrestling through personal growth, which is totally different than an awakening to the soul.
Which is a beautiful state.
Yeah.
Once you're in that, you can get yourself to that beautiful state, despite what shit's coming at you. You know, the new version of the shit, you know, that wasn't the same as yesterday. As soon as you're able to stay in that beautiful state, then those shits aren't shits anymore as they're coming at you. Right?
No shit.
They get filtered on the way over. They get thrown, but they go through a filter, and they're not shit by the time they get to you.
You know, so one of the pieces that both of us have, we both have a daily practice. And we want to encourage you, you know, I know we all come from different schools and lineages. I think there's 430 people at this, you know, One Tantra Festival now. And there's like, each of us have different backgrounds. And some of us, it's Vipassana, and other people, it's like, let's do Cobra breath in the morning. And we're not here to tell you, you know, what you need to do to get into your highest vibration. But we are here to model that if you put your spiritual practice at the center of your day, and you say, I'm going to start the day on the highest vibration, doing the thing that makes me feel most soul aligned. And maybe that's starting the day with making love. Maybe that's starting the day like Michael does often, goes for a jog or a run or a surf, or like, how do you start? And then come to your beloved, or like if you're single, you come to your dating app, and instead of being like, oh, I hate this, and blah, 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 you come to your dating app from a high vibration, and you're like, how can I show up and give the benefit of the doubt to everyone whose path I cross, you know, and like I come from the highest expectation field. And whether it's a good morning kiss or a good night kiss, it's like, I'm going to relate to that person at the level of soul, even if they're stuck in their pattern. And now here's a big tip that's going to help you make that distinction. How many people, by the way, are trained in nonviolent communication or needs work, or even inner children? You know, there's a lot of like needs work is what it is, where you're working on your personal needs and the needs you didn't get met as a child. A lot of you have a background in that. And one of my favorite teachers is Marshall Rosenberg, who has like these huge like taxonomies of all these different needs. And by the way, the personality needs, the soul loves. And so sometimes we'll get stuck in these personality needs, and it's hard because there's so many and we get mired in it. I'm going to give you Tony Robbins's 6 needs. And I'm going to share with you how this just makes things just essential, and it helps us kind of transcend the trap of trying to get our needs met in relationship, and helps us transcend to what the soul values, which is beyond the needs. Okay. So if Paula, you could make the screenshot, The 6 needs are actually 3 different pairs of almost paradoxes. And so the first thing that you'll see is certainty versus variety. Now, the personality, by the way, all of us have all 6 needs in different combinations, and we're often driven by one need in the personality and maybe one need in the soul. But certainty versus variety is a really common fight that you see in, for example, polyamory, where people are like, oh, I want security, I want the relationship, I want, the routine, whatever it is I need to know, versus, oh, I want to have adventures and lots of lovers and, variety, like a kind of a freedom. So these are kind of catch-alls. There's lots of different needs for certainty, like security and routine and reliability. Like there's lots, but that he just sums all the needs into certainty. And it contrasts that we all also have the need for variety. Okay. Now, additionally, our personalities also have a deep need to be significant. And significance is like, I want to shine. I want to be famous.
Special.
Yeah. I want to be noticed. I want to be
the best.
Yeah. All the superlatives, right? And then the contrast is love and connection is often like, I want everyone to feel good. I want everyone to get along. And then let's not compare. Let's actually just be, the need is for harmony, for more connection, for more intimacy. And that we don't want to create the separation that significance creates. Sometimes we want to create the unity and the connection. So again, all of us have all these needs in different combinations, but the next level is actually soul needs. Now, he calls them needs. I prefer to talk about the soul having values rather than needs, but it doesn't matter. The point is that all of our souls want to evolve. Part of the God impulse that is moving through me as me is the evolutionary directive that wants me to become more. Like that's what God does as it peoples, as it becomes human. It's like, so the divine in us wants us to grow and become more and evolve. So that's a huge need. And then what happens when we grow, we obviously want to turn around and give back and share and contribute and make a difference. And there's a time when this contribution need can turn into like, oh, I want to serve so that I can get noticed, or I want, we can try to get other needs met, and it's not purely soul. But as a whole, when it's coming from an altruistic soul place, the impulse to contribute is actually what the soul is here for. Its purpose is to really serve the world soul.
Should I mention just like what our basic soul?
Sure, Paula, you can take the document off, and we're going to be wrapping up soon.
Yeah. So I would say with us, our main kind of soul kind of drive or soul purpose, as some people would call it, mine is peace. So peace on earth, peace in relationship, all of that. For KamalaDevi, I would say that theirs is creativity. They have a huge amount of creative, contribution that's coming out to the world. Mm-hmm. And when we both have both of these, mm-hmm. But we're just a little bit balanced differently. And then our relationship is about kind of like, it's almost like water in a levee, like they have more of one and I have more of the other. And we're kind of mixing those two together in our relationship as we let that water come into the others, for both of those.
What he's describing is a medicine exchange, right? So as you saw Tony Robbins' 6 needs, you didn't see peace on there, you didn't see creativity on there, because those are unique frequencies. Now, if we opened the channel, we would hear each of you, your soul has some unique frequency. Maybe it's courage, maybe it's like, and it because the people who know your soul the most, they see that and they're like, I am in awe of your, for example, nurturance or your generosity or some quality that is the essence of your soul. And that's different than you know, what you're trying to get all the time, although it might be related. And when you know that, and you are that in relationship, you can actually have these medicinal exchanges. Like Michael and I have deeply come together, you know, and we are creating a partnership where we can be peace and creativity. And I have other partnerships that bring out other qualities of my soul and other qualities of his soul. Like he has like this wisdom that comes through in other relations, like this crazy, like sacred clown wisdom that comes through, you know. And so the point is not to like label or narrow your soul medicine. It's to say, whew, how do I show up in a partnership and bring out the best in each other? So I want to bring out the best in Michael. He wants to bring out the best in me. And how I do that is by transcending a lot of the wounding and a lot of the story that really is quite outdated. It's old childhood stuff that's not real relevant to my soul and his soul. And so that daily practice, and by the way, if you're solo, you do it alone. And when you're in partnership, we're going to give you some examples, some practices that we do before we close, because we would love to say, when you have a partner who's wanting to meet at the soul level, how do you, especially like, you know, between us, we have 3 companies. We've got a house, we've got 12 lovers, we've got a kid, we've got elder parents who are, you know, in need. And like, how do we manage all of that? Not to mention, you know, as the lead faculty of ISTA, who's traveling the world, I am gone 1 week out of the month. Like, instead of coming to each other like spent and like, I need nourishment, I'm tired, I need you to hold me, I need you to hear me. It's like, how do I fill my well, show up, and then we can meet at that soul level. Do you want to tell them what we do before bed every night?
Yeah, we do a practice. I highly recommend it, but it's an appreciation shower, basically.
Oh, wow. We just showered glass all over the floor.
That was just for a special effect so that you'll listen. Is everyone listening now?
We'll take care of that in a minute.
So we do an appreciation shower, basically 3 appreciations. I appreciate something about KamalaDevi. She appreciates something about me. I appreciate something about KamalaDevi. And we go back and forth right before sleep.
Yeah, and it is actually at the soul level. So it's often looking throughout the day or the last time we connected or since we did the thing last, when like I was touched, I felt you the most, or there was this transcendent moment when, you know, and this morning particularly, for example, when we were making love and you shared with me, oh, I've got stuff in my mind, but it's not my heart. And you just shared with me at the heart level before we moved into lovemaking verbally. Like that really touched me. And so we take that moment to just exchange those reflections. And in the beginning, by the way, when we started this practice, it was a practice and it was work. We started this practice when we were near divorce, really in pain. And we had to generate, okay, what do I appreciate about you? But now it's just, we overflow it and we really have kept it on and recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the other, we're probably at time to close. Let's see if there's any questions. Yeah, as we're kind of wrapping up, we're curious if there's anything you want clarity on or anything that you really came here to get that you wanted to just throw at us in the PS. It's important to note that the ego, when you awaken to the soul, the ego, it's not to kill the ego, it's that the ego serves the soul. So I like to think of it like the ego is the chauffeur. My soul doesn't know how to drive, but the ego is a great driver, takes the quickest route, does the whole, driving bit. And the soul is actually the one who's visioning where to go.
Yeah. Can I say one other thing too? One thing that I think about is that personality or the ego is a perfectionist, and the soul has just dropped all of its standards. Okay. It's like, as long as you don't steal more than $500 from me and you don't kill my cat, I'm good.
With the quality of your soul is really accepting and easygoing, and it's really, really beautiful because you want to know your soul and be true to that.
It's unconditional.
Yeah.
Is really the summary of that. The soul.
Beautiful. Good. Other questions or reflections? We have time for just one or two more. Good. So part of we started this journey off by saying, let's own the patterns that we have, like our personality. So my personality wants variety, because anytime we're wanting, it's like, hey, I want this because this is my ego, my personality, that's what wants, right? And it's okay if the ego personality can also want security, one person, whatever, but you're wanting it, and you say, okay, I welcome that wanting, I own that. That's all part of how I'm going to co-create the relating. And the soul is not actually about the form and the structure and whether you're doing a yoni massage or you're checking in every day. All of that happens at the personality level, which is again part of the chauffeur and the driving in the 3D world. We need all that for relationship, like creating the relationship container. But soul happens beyond the form. And there's a way where I want to show, like, I'm going to invite you and others to show up to every relationship, to be like, yeah, we could talk about the rhythm that we meet each other and how we want to build the relationship, but that's not soul. Soul is, how do I bring out the best in you? How do you bring out the best in me? And that could be in a one-time encounter on a Zoom workshop with someone, or it can be in a 20-year relationship where you're deeply gardening and cultivating a whole ecosystem. You want to, in every container, say to yourself, how do I bring out the best in this person? And if it's variety and that person wants security or wants something, and you're like, I'm not meeting you there, let's just meet in the place where we bring out the best in each other. Yeah. What I'm inspired by in Rachel's share is that our souls are immortal. These are the parts of us that have traveled through many lifetimes or lifetimes in the future. And it's our personalities that are, in this lifetime trying to get these needs met now. And I'm going to invite you, if you're going to widen the relationship to your soul, to be okay not getting what you want, to be okay not getting what you need. That at the soul level, there is, like Michael said, drop your standards and just enjoy the birds and the sunlight and the, something that's really, whatever will help you transcend whatever you're seeking, needing, attached. And it's really, really a deep spiritual practice to ask not only who am I as a soul, and who am I when I'm not getting what I want?
Yes.
And so with that, we're going to wrap up. I'd love to make a few invitations. Thank you. And can you plug that in? The invitations, first and foremost, is for those of you who haven't been to ISTA, it's International School of Temple Arts. So go to ista.life, and there you'll see who we are as a mystery school, what the invitations are. I highly recommend that you dive into the spiritual shamanic sexual experience for a week to really do rituals and ceremonies to anchor these teachings. It's probably the most direct way to get into the vibration of what we're really speaking about. So that's the first invitation. The next is that if you are a healer, a teacher, a dakini, a daka, and you want deep mentorship, that's my passion. I love to work with people who are love leaders, and I have a whole love leadership program. And normally it's an invitation for a $250 session with myself to see how I can support your profession, how I can support your work in the world. And as a gift for those of you who are on this call, please write me this week right away. I'm happy to offer it for $108. So if you're a professional and you want to work with me deeper, that's my invitation. Is it's more than half off, just $108 to have a deep upgrade on your life's path with me. And then to see if we're aligned for a deeper mentorship program together. So Michael and I feel it's such an honor to have spent this time with you, and we would love to get, as you're saying goodbye, a few frequencies of what you got from this. Like if you just wanted like a closing circle, drop into a word or two of what you're taking away, what you're excited about, and see if you can really just distill it down. Then I'm going to invite you to take yourself off mute and just say a word or two as we wave goodbye. So what was the most valuable thing you got in a word or two?
For me, the most valuable thing was, how do you bring out the best in me, and how can I bring out the best in you? And just dropping all the stories.
Aho.
Thank you.
For me, it was being aware of my core wounds. Thank you.
Oh.
A daily practice of soul commitment each morning.
Beautiful.
I think for me, it's my inner child, little girl's ready to shine forth.
Yay.
Soul shine.
Uh-huh.
Me, soul drops all standards, personality is perfectionist.
Drop those standards. I like it.
For me, I like the appreciations that you would give each other every night. That's a ceremony that I would love to repeat.
For me, it was stay in a high vibrational, beautiful place as much as you can.
Okay.
Super appreciating all of those chats, all the comments that you wrote. Thank you, everybody, for just showing up and shining. Blessings.
Blessings.
Bye.